of organised retaliation and insane brutality that took place after Cronulla, where again the police actually refused to intervene. It's well known quotes from the police minister where convoys of Arab males leading out of Lakemba and Punchbowl, police were told not to intervene. So you've got convoys of 30-odd cars leaving the Lakemba Mosque, heading for these southern beaches, and when they arrived there, all hell broke loose. They're just, with reckless abandon, anybody on the street, any property, any cars were smashed and vandalised. And this orgy of retaliation went on unchecked for 3 days after the event. And
wow.
So there's a bit of a background there that most people aren't aware of. What you read if you Google Cronulla riots is white trash, and that is not really not adequate knowledge.
Mm-hmm. Hey, Lionheart, have there been any incidents in England? Because we wouldn't hear about it if there was. Any incidents like this in England where the common average person said enough was enough, and we had anything like what they had in Australia?
Yeah, there's been a few riots. You've had the most recent I know of, Windsor, where the Queen's residence is. There was riots there over a mosque that was being built. A few young girls. I actually read on Green Arrow's website, some young girl, she was like spat at, stamped on in front of a police officer by Muslim youths. Luckily, he was arrested and imprisoned for it, I think. But yeah, no, you've got it, but not on that scale yet. But that's only because really the Muslim communities in this country, round where I am anyway, they've taken control. They've overrun and they've taken control because the indigenous population, the non-Muslim population, don't see or don't know what's going on around them. They just see this criminality and just put it down to criminality, but not that it's an organised military front of a large kingdom, really, because Islam is a kingdom. It's got its military wing, it's got its religious wing, it's got its political wing. It's a whole way of life. It's not just...
Exactly. That is the same situation here, Lionheart. People are not aware of the organisation that's behind this and the impetus that's come from an organised Islam. It's I think, to answer EB again, the average Australian would be falling into the same categories you just described. They would tend to see a lot of this as isolated incidents of one-on-one violence or so forth. They don't yet grasp fully that this is a caliphate we're talking about. Not
Sorry,
building.
Follow-up question to that. Do you mind if I ask a follow-up question to that? Because it seems, from what I read and hear, they talk of Eurabia, and there seemed to be this limited amount of time, to do something about that. Do you not only do you fear that for Australia, but do you think it's sooner rather than later?
Timeline's hard to suggest, EB, but after you take something like Cronulla out of the picture and take a broader overview, there has been massive investment funds from Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates pouring into Australia over the last few years, and particularly the last 5 years. It's really accelerated. So they are gaining stranglehold over many of our institutions.
Do you have any idea of the figure for the finances?
Well, I wouldn't like to be quoted directly, exactly, but my understanding is it's something like $318 billion has been invested.
Jeez.
Yeah,
billion.
That's over a decade. Yeah, but it's still. I mean, you just have to ask, what is the quid pro quo? This money is not being given to us.
No, they don't give gifts. Let's get.
No, they don't give. No. We have a regular contributor to one of our websites, JTEX, wonderful bloke, who spends his days researching this sort of stuff. And recently he sent me a document. There was just a 6-page PDF file of nothing but listing investments in Australia from the United Arab Emirates, and it's absolutely astonishing the reach right across the whole social spectrum. They have their tentacles into everything, going from one of Australia's most famous icons, the Melbourne Cup, is now the Emirates Melbourne Cup.
Oh, really?
Yes, that's how it's been. Yes.
Oh,
one of Australia's most famous football teams, the Collingwood Australian football team, is now the Emirates Collingwood football team. Things like that. And you can't turn around without you lift up a rock and there they are.
I wish they would live under a rock.
Yeah. No, the problem is none of this has happened without the collusion of people in power, and that's quite obvious. I mean, you have that same problem in America with people enabling this sort of investment to go unchecked. You have the same problem in England. So there is an accountability to be had, but at the moment there is no mechanism for getting that accountability.
Yes, you recently wrote a piece on Democracy Frontline, when government fails the people.
Yes, that might have been a bit...
pretty powerful piece of writing. I don't think... Well, I got 8 comments. That's pretty fair. You've been a blogger for a long time. Not as long as you have.
There are periods of incredible despair.
Yeah.
I'm very passionate about my country, and I am extremely multicultural, and I've lived in Asia for 10 years. I'm married to an Asian woman. Racism is not an issue in my life, and patriotism was never a major issue for me until it was forced upon me by these people. But I've always loved my country.
I feel exactly the same way.
I despair from time to time. I'll confess to that. There are times of great depression when I can't face the keyboard another day. I seem to have run out of things to say, but then
I have to take a break from time to time. And my blog, it's primarily about Islam and CAIR and that kind of thing, Council on American Islamic Relations.
Yes.
But from time to time, I just have to get away from it. I can't keep looking at it.
Well, this is again, that does sort of lie at the root of the problem. That any response that I see happening, England, America, Australia, elsewhere, is coming from grassroots, groundswell, not from political parties, not from political players. So we are unempowered. We don't have the reach of these people. And it leads you to the point where you feel betrayed by your leadership class.
What will it take for the political power to see what's happening?
I'm sorry?
What will it take for the political powers to be, the Western political powers to wake up?
Well, I hate to be a doomsayer, but it will take other events like 9/11, I believe.
That wasn't enough. I can't.
Yeah, well, apparently not. No, which astonishes me. I cannot believe. Come on, America, wake up! I cannot believe that America's response has been so weak in the face of something as horrendous as 9/11. I mean, those images are seared on my eyeballs. I cannot ever forget that, and I'm amazed that Americans can.
Well, not only that, but look at our president. He stands in that mosque, and again, just a few weeks ago, saying how great Islam was as a religion of peace.
And not only that, he names an envoy or talks about an envoy to the Organization of Islamic Countries. So let's have a little bit more appeasement here.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
well, they've given up.
I've got to say, I mean, God gave the Americans the Second Amendment for a reason.
Hear, hear.
I'm not allowed to say that, am I?
You are allowed to say that.
No. Well, we don't have one here, so you got to be very careful. I don't know. I do get very depressed about the situation. But that said, because I cannot not do this, I'm always out there, and I travel around Victoria, where I live, heavily. I'm an inveterate car driver because I'm, as you know, I'm disabled. So the only way I can get to places is by car. And wherever I go, I have what I now term the conversation, and I've got it down to a good 15 minutes. So I can deliver a good anti-jihad
I'm pretty
punch.
good at it too. I even sprang it on